Hello and welcome, friends, to We Heal with healers Eliana Miranda and Holly Wheeler. We have expansive conversations about healing our hearts, bodies, lineages, communities, and our beloved home planet. We are so happy to invite you into this space. Thanks for joining us. Let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the We Heal podcast here with Eliana Miranda and myself, Holly Wheeler. Thanks so much for joining us. Today we are chatting about allies, plants, animals, spirits, gods, goddesses, archetypes, and other human beings. On our last episode, we mentioned giving voice to some of the allies that work with us and that were coming in for this podcast. So we decided to share some of these allies and our own relationships to them. Why are we working with allies? Why are we talking about allies? So allies have really been coming into our lives and our awareness to work with, especially the last couple years. We, as human beings, are all communal beings, and we're living this very isolated life and lifestyle. And our culture is, especially if you're living in the United States, very isolated. And a lot of us move away from our families. We don't really live in communities anymore like we used to. And not only that, but we're also really separated from nature and from the natural communities that we used to be a part of in our everyday lives. And this is a huge tool for finding and receiving support through this age of transformation. And also right after, we all just went through the pandemic together, the global community, we all just went through this hugely stressful life event. And these allies, we feel are really coming through to assist humanity right now. And we're really excited to share more about allyship with you listeners. So Eliana, could you tell us a little bit about your journey with allies and your own allies?
Yeah, thanks, Holly. I love hearing your kind of description of why the allies have really risen up and asked to be communicated with so strongly in the last couple of years. That kind of dissociation from our spirit, from nature, from the plants, from the animals, from these archetypes of God, has really kind of fractaled us in so many different ways and unplugged us from our roots and unplugged us from who we are. And even as, human beings, we have this connection to this spiritual realm, and the spiritual realm is like very much interwoven into the fabric of this matricy. And a lot of the guides and the allies in human form right now are inviting in and like giving voice to these other beings that may have been pushed aside by patriarchy or capitalism or anything that has caused this like fractalization of ourselves from this intuitive, natural way that we can communicate with the reality around us. So I feel like my journey into connecting with my allies and my spiritual guides and the beings that have been supporting me both in my life and also in my work came in a little differently than I used to hear other spiritual people talking about their allies or their guides. They always seem to like have some archangel that they knew about or some goddess that they were working with or some kind of like big expression of a spiritual essence. And I kind of thought that's how it would be. You'd start working with spirit or doing this kind of spiritual work, and you would just have these beings show up and like make their names known and who they are. And that was not actually my journey into it. And I think that's, I feel that I've spent a lot of time in the cosmic realms doing a lot of kind of intergalactic work, and I have been summoned to the earth. We've been summoned to the earth to really kind of shepherd and hold space for this planet and her evolution and her in her raising of her consciousness. And so I think that that's kind of why my journey with the allies came in like a very kind of grounded human way. And then it spiraled open into some of these like bigger energetic archetypes, or these bigger allies that I had been seeing in the spiritual community that people were working with. But I started from a grounded place with it. And that's one of the reasons I kind of wanted to share this pathway, because we don't all get into it in the same way. You know, we kind of come from our own different experiences and relationships with both humans, but our relationship with the energies around us, our relationship with plants, our relationship with animals, our relationship with food, our relationship with our breath. Allyship is about building relationships. And if you don't have that, all right, that intention kind of built into the thread, that that's a two-way conversation between you and a guide, and not just you continuing to ask and receive, oftentimes there's kind of like a wall up between that full access to that archetype. So yeah, I really kind of started this pathway with animals being like my main guide and allyship. Like they were such a grounded way for me to connect with spirit, which in a way that felt very kind of human and earthly and like real, right? It was like a coyote running down the street in front of me was very real. It was very tangible. It was right there in front of me. A scorpion crawling up my body before my husband proposed. Like that was very real. It was a very a physical being that I could see as this like messenger from spirit. And so, you know, I definitely like went into the teachings of the indigenous and the Native Americans to learn what these animals were speaking and what they were trying to communicate with me. And the dream realm started to activate these animal archetypes to show up and give them a voice in a place where they could actually have some sort of voice. And the journey kind of went from there. It went, you know, from animals, and then it spiraled open into, like archangels and those kinds of beings have been more recent. Dragons have been more recent. These kinds of like bigger expressions have been more recent, but it was the animals and then the ancestors. And the ancestors showed up around me, of course, with my grandparents, but then when my mom died, and I could really feel that presence and that spirit next to me. And it was so familiar and so attuned, like, right. I know that spirit inside and out. I've lived inside of that, the spirit's body when she was in her body, you know, I knew that spirit, that essence. And so when her spirit kind of showed up as an ally, as support, I was able to connect in with this like spiritual expression of these energies, of these, you know, potencies that are from the other realm, but do it in a way that still felt very human and very connected to my human and very connected to my embodiment and my earth project, and not kind of like searching up in the realms for something to give me guidance when it was like there was just something so real right next to me. And then feeling the realness of my ancestors has then allowed me to feel the realness of these other kinds of higher beings, although I don't consider them higher. I just consider them like a more, they hold a bigger auric imprint of the God soul, right? Of like the original consciousness. So yeah, that was kind of my journey in. That was a long-winded response, but I did want to like bring in that like this can be quantum and human. We talk about that, you know, that we can move from this big spiritual expression all the way down to seeing, you know, a black ant crawling across your wall and realizing that that ant is an ally and a messenger for you, and it should be honored and recognized as such. So Holly, do you want to kind of give anything that came up for you in that, of like your journey of how you got here, and really what wants to seed in with our listeners about your allyship and your conversations with them?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's funny. I know you're saying it's long-winded, but it's such a like lifetime journey, like making allies, you know, and forming and nurturing those relationships. And I love what you were saying, just about like that giving and receiving, um, that channel, you know, that play, that kind of back and forth. You know, I think that one way to like the easiest, most human way to form allies and make friends is to offer, to make an offering, to gift. You know, a lot of times food, you know, gifting food, sharing food, that's kind of like such a primal like method, I guess, to make friends and forge those allyships. But a lot of like these beings or deities or archetypes or whatever, and spirit too, it's like making an offering to be able to receive an offering, and kind of, you know, approaching allyship in that way with that in mind, I think is something that I have learned over the years, and just been sitting with a little bit deeper, you know, and wanting to really offer something to my allies as well. And yeah, I think my journey started also very grounded. I think, I don't know, I mean, I guess I don't know a lot of other people's journeys with allies, but I feel like that's probably a pretty easy way to start with it, is just very grounded. Crystals, plants, cannabis definitely was a huge ally for me in opening up my, um, I guess, just my intuition and my connection with spirit, and also psychedelic mushrooms. Just some of the beings and the spirits that I would have visions of in on those with those plant allies, would just kind of totally open the door to that realm, to that spirit realm, something that I hadn't really been super connected to before, where I was like, oh, I feel the energy of this crystal. I feel the energy of this tea that I'm drinking, this lavender tea. You know, you feel the effects of it, you feel the plant spirit of it quite easily with those. Whereas sometimes the more ethereal allies are a little bit more difficult to connect to if you don't have like a really like dedicated meditation practice or something, you know. Um, so yeah, that's kind of where I started. Plants, herbs. I love herbs, crystals. Yeah, and then kind of branching out and getting into the more ethereal realms. I think that I had a family member die earlier this year, and that kind of opened up a lot of new allies in the ancestral kind of like spirit realm. And yeah, that I think that knowing somebody on the other side can really open you up to those kinds of energies, those kind of partnerships that go beyond this living, grounded human experience. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that offering too, because we've said before that you really hold down the body work, and I've been like kind of holding down this like virtual energetic realm, very Manny, Jenny, and projector of us. And so, you've definitely introduced me to like very physical allies too, like plant allies and blue lotus and these things that I would have never connected with or like even known that they were available to me, had you not had this like magical apothecary of all of these spiritual allies that grew from the earth, that you've been communing with and connecting with for so long. So yeah, I love that like we can weave in such different aspects of the conversation. And even you telling the story about your daughter earlier and taking her to this like magical place and having, two beings walk up, and one of them offered her food, a little kid like came up, gave her a hug and gave her food. And it's like, those are allies, right? Like that is her ally entering her into the space. So it doesn't have to be these like big spiritual concepts. It can be as simple as like the child that comes and offers your kid a piece of candy and welcomes them to the space. Like, why, hey, guru, like, thank you, allies, for showing up.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, let's go ahead and share a little bit about our intentions with deciding what allies are coming through and what allies we're going to share on this podcast. Can you talk a little bit about that, Eliana?
Yeah, we had a lot of different ways that we could have taken this conversation, but we really wanted to kind of attune the message to our listeners, to you that's here listening, of an ally that would like to support you or work with you or connect with you. So instead of washing this podcast with every ally that we've ever connected with in our life, we really tuned into a message for the reader, wherever you're the reader, the reader, I guess you're reading with us or reading this energy with us,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
for the listener to receive this, wherever you're at on the journey, whatever place and time, just know that these messages are meant to meet you where you're at on the path. And that really was how we are trying to bring them through. So yeah, did you want to get into the details, Holly?
Yeah, absolutely. Are you okay if I just launch into the allies and the allies? Okay, cool. Yeah, so the first couple, I kind of grouped mine together because there are just so many that we've been working with for a long time, and so many that wanted to come through. They were all like, pick me. So I'm gonna do like a couple little categories. Um, so this for this first category, I feel like this is like just what we were talking about. It's so grounded. It's such a like easy place to start if you're kind of like, what, like dragons, archangels, it's like, okay, um, rocks and trees and plants and like, but local ones. So for me, my journey started with, going to a crystal store and picking out like moldavites and like all these like high vibrational crystals. And that is beautiful. And do that if you feel called to that. I have also been really practicing and deepening lately, like the last year, with my own local uh allies, just like the ones like right outside your door. Rosemary Gladstar is this beautiful witchy herbalist. She's an amazing herbalist. She's like the OG herbalist. And she says that, if you want to find your herbal allies, like your medicine, like look right outside your door. Look at the plants that grow right outside your door in your yard. Look at the weeds. What is coming into your life. There's a lot of dandelions in my yard. And dandelion root is, and even the leaves and everything, the whole plant really is edible. And it's medicine, it's cleansing medicine, detox medicine, it's liver medicine, it's medicine that a lot of us could really benefit from, especially since so much of our food, especially in the US and other countries too, our food is just very toxic and chemically treated. And this ally, the dandelion, it can help with that. It can assist with that. So this is such a grounded approach, I feel like, to start. And also just getting familiar with the rocks that are in your energy. They're like already around you. Um, and looking up like what they are and their magical qualities, because they do have magical qualities too, even like little stones that you find buried in your yard or whatever. Like, um, yeah, these are really powerful allies to work with in your life. And there's, a lot of different ways to work with them. But that's just a couple, picking the dandelions, picking the herbs around, making teas and kind of sitting with them or just inhaling their scents. Using rocks, gathering up rocks from your neighborhood, your local park, just right around your house, creating grids with them, using those as altar stones. I think that a lot of us, as we're getting into like the more spiritual community, we really want like the quartz crystals and the amethyst and the shiny crystals and the imported crystals. And they're all so beautiful and they're all such amazing allies as well. But don't forget about the ones that have been there with you the whole time. Because it's just so cool to be able to form a relationship with the ones that like you came to, like the universe conspired to plant you in whatever living situation you're in. And and all of these plants are growing around you, and it's like kind of honoring that aspect and that coincidence or synchronicity or whatever you want to call it, that divine yeah, that just the divine interaction and the divine meeting of you and your allies. And yeah, so that's the first ally that was coming in. Local rocks, stones, trees, plants, herbs, all of those things. Look at the plants, look at the life around you, and see if you can commune with them, sit with them, hold them, put your hands on them, meditate with them, and listen.
Mm. I'm like just so excited that you brought up the dandelion because I had a whole moment with the dandelion today. It was just on my path. I was taking a walk and I picked it up and I communed with it and I asked it questions. And I think that's a really good way that you were alluding to of like sitting, meditating, listening to it. But you can also ask these beings questions. You can ask the trees for messages, and though at first it might seem like you're making something up or like, a little love yourself pops into your head and you're like, well, where'd that come from? Like, if you asked for the message, like somebody sent the message, right? The tree sent the message, the rock sent the message. So also just being able to ask and letting them in their own words respond to you and being okay with whatever it is that they have to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. A great way to do that is to go outside and sit with your journal and ask questions and see like what's coming up with the, asking the rocks or the earth below you, that like the soils below you, like beautiful. Eliana, would you like to share another ally, or what do you think?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess maybe I'll talk about the animal community since we're talking
Yeah.
about like the
Right.
earthly connections. Um, yeah, so I brought through the animals before, but they very much wanted to be a part of this conversation. And the two that came through really strongly were the raven and the dog spirit. And so the dog can be the coyote, the wolf, it can be different fractals of this dog spirit. The raven also, I feel like you can intertwine the crow into that archetype, although they do have their own energies and they do have their own expressions. But yeah, those two kind of forces wanted to show themselves. So one is rooted to the earth, right? The dog walks on the earth. Many of us have dogs in our home. I've always had a dog since I was a child in my space with me. So I've always felt this kind of connection to the wolf spirit specifically. And so the wolf is like about like kind of finding your pack and finding your tribe and being able to find your people, those other loons that want to howl at the moon with you. But there's also kind of like the archetype of the lone wolf. So it's like about like honoring your path and your mission and your purpose and this kind of present experience of that. And then the raven, kind of like watching over the magic, like the raven can see into past, present, and future. It has this that third seership eye that is able to both look into the dark and into the light. And the raven doesn't differentiate. It doesn't hold one above the other, like hold space kind of for all aspects of the earthly experience. And so I bring those very specific allies in to just like kind of root you into like the dog that could be sitting there next to you or the bird that could be sitting outside of your window, and holding space for them as like the ultimate ally, as Holly said, the beings that are already in your space, that are already with you, that are working with you, that your soul kind of contracted for you to have with you, like while you were growing up, while you were communing with the beings that were around you. And yeah, the animals, like they're just a really beautiful landscape of possibilities of exchanges. And you can do that by simply walking outside your door and just seeing what animal is there to greet you. And so depending upon where you are in the world, right, like the animals that reflect back to you, they're messengers of the land. And so they're not always going to be the big power animal or the big, big lion or bear, these big like spirits that we constantly kind of hold up into this regard as like, oh, if this is my animal spirit or my animal guide. I put quotes around animal spirit because I know that word is it's a part of the indigenous culture. So yeah, we kind of call in these essences to be like, it doesn't have to be the most powerful one, it doesn't have to be the most ferocious king of the yard, like it really can be just like this simple, sweet blue canary, that's like flying around your field and has just some wisdom to drop in. And the animals don't have voices in the sense that we normally hear as voices, just like the rocks and the trees. So it does become about like when they show up, what were you thinking about when that animal comes into your life? Even if you see a picture of an animal like painted somewhere and it's not a real life animal, like if you're in a city, when did that being reveal itself to you? When did it want itself to be seen based off of what you were kind of channeling in, thinking about, talking about with a friend, just, working on or co-creating with somebody else? Like they'll show up. And if you're paying attention, they'll continue to show up and they'll continue to be in this reciprocity with you. And it's interesting because, I told my brother about this a long time ago. My brother is like 13 years older than me. He's very spiritual, but from like a very different realm of things. Like he thinks, he said he probably was one of the people that burned the witches. Like we're very far apart in our worlds. He's a powerful being, right? He's like this big kind of galactic powerful being. And I brought up the animal guides to him and he just thought I was being like a silly little playful girl, these like animal creatures that will come and speak to you. But he trusts me. And so he kind of allowed and invited it in one day, and the animals come to him now. And it's like, he's got owls just constantly sitting on his house. He's got deers just wandering around his yard all the time, and not any of his neighbors, just his house. And it was like, once he opened the door and he softened his heart, he had like this, big softening of his masculine. And I think the animals were a part of that as well. I think that's why the animals came to me, was to help me soften my masculine and be in more communion with the earth. So yeah, so I think animals do often come through for those that might be hyper masculine or might be hyper devoted to like intergalactic conversation or searching and have maybe dislocated themselves from the earth grid. They're trying to bring us back to the earth, and they're trying to really help us communicate with like the mother planet, like the feminine archetype that's living in all of our bodies, that's living in all of our fields, that we were literally born from. And the animals are like her beings, they're like her little children. So that's what I have to say about animals. Do you have anything to say about animals?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think like I love what you said about it's so grounded, like working with these animals. Like you can literally just look outside, or if you're on a walk or whatever, or if you're even inside your home and you hear an animal, it's like it's just kind of like tuning into the energies outside of yourself, but still around yourself in your present moment in time and in your present space in time. So it's just like it's super connecting to your present experience and honoring that each moment and each being that you're interacting with, or each being that is coming into your field, has a message or is there for a reason, or it's like it's not just a coincidence. The universe conspired to put these beings into your field at this moment in time. And it just, I feel like this practice with the animals, with the plants that live near you and stuff, it's just very presencing. It kind of just forces you to really honor the synchronicities and tune into the synchronicities too. Yeah, it's just life becomes a lot more magical with those allies and with those synchronistic interactions with them.
Yeah, I love how you're kind of tuning us into the fact that it does require presence, and it requires an openness, right? It's like you really have to be able to be open to the magic that's afoot and not just let it pass you by, which patriarchy, capitalism, like we're just swiping right, like looking for the next thing, like where's the next hit we can get from whatever it is that they've fed to us as something that gives us spiritual sustenance. And it's the practice and the work to kind of slow down and get into the tune and the resonance of the spiritual energies, which don't operate on that very linear kind of go on to the next one track. They very much play in their own space and time. And so it requires you to get very attuned to your internal space and time reservoir so that you can really kind of be in what is presently showing up for you.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I feel like a really great example of that is when Eliana and I first started this call before we started recording our podcast. I know you were talking about how dogs and the dog spirit, the wolf spirit, has been a huge ally in your life, and you're a dog person. And I'm a cat person, and you know that about me. And you were wondering if like cats were going to be coming in. And I don't have anything actually written or prepared to talk about cats, but as we were chatting before we started recording, a cat just like was wandering in my backyard, and I'm a cat person. I've always had cats around. I have a neighbor that just like always is just producing like more cats and more cats and more cats. So they're always wandering through our yard or around our house. And it just feels like, okay, we have like a cat is like our ally. So but it's funny when these like allies kind of come in and they like to, it's a play. It's like, it's kind of like a game, like, oh, there's that cat. And then Eliana was like, oh, that is like kind of a message for me. Like it links back into what I was saying. And I brought that into your field. And so it's kind of just like a fun game. All these allies and how they weave into our lives and that cosmic play.
Yeah.
Love it.
And like another emphasis on how like human beings are also such an important ally, because oftentimes we miss these things, or we chalk it up as just coincidence, or
Mhm.
you don't, we can write things off so easily as human beings. So when you have somebody else like reflect something back to you, or recognize that that little moment of a cat coming by was like a big message for me, but like without that conversation, without this open communication about allyship and about spirit and about these other realms of experience that you and I get to play in, that connection maybe wouldn't have been made. So again, just like
Right.
confirming what Holly was saying earlier, that like your human allies are vital in this practice because they will make it real for you, if it at first doesn't
Yeah.
seem as real.
Yeah, and more beings just amplify the magic. They amplify those magic synchronicities. Like Eliana, I feel like ever since we've been friends and we've been kind of chatting about like what allies we're working with or whatever, I feel like more and more have come through. And then when I share something with you, you're like, oh my God, that's a message for me for this thing. And it's like, it's just so trippy and cool and coincidental, synchronistic. It's just like we're like in divine partnership with everyone in our lives. And so when people are speaking and when people are really tuned in and speaking from their hearts, a lot of times they'll give you messages, from spirit as well. So just kind of this whole practice of allyship is really just tuning us into the messages that are waiting for us like all around us,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Just like
Yeah.
tap in that spiritual sustenance and support fountain and like filling up our cups and saying
Mhm.
like we're allowed to drink from this just as all beings are allowed to drink from the cup of source energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Did you want to bring in our next topic?
Yes, I would love to. So another ally that I wanted to call upon, or not that I wanted to, but just one that was really coming in for me in a weird way, I guess. Like the ally that I want to share with you is the color frequency of blue. This has been coming up so much for me, for a ton of other beings that I know. And the message has been really clear. I've been doing some reading and some sitting with this ally, and the message is it's just all about communication. And it really makes sense. Like, as I'm talking about this on the podcast, it's like communication, like with your allies, like opening up. How do you open up a relationship with somebody? You work on your communication, you work on the throat chakra. The color blue, the frequency of blue is the color of the throat chakra. And the throat chakra governs not only like outward communication, but also inward and listening and receiving um and also just clarity. Like your truth kind of resides here, and if this is blocked, the truth from your heart can't get out, has no way of expressing, and not only expressing through your voice, but through your work, through your writing, through out your hands into the world. And so this frequency of blue is really coming in to help people on the spiritual path, people on the healing path, our listeners, to help you clear this channel, this sacred channel, that will assist you in offering your medicine to the world, your unique, your heart's unique signature soul codes that you were born here to bring through. It's the time. Like now is the time to bring your messages through. It's been very clear to me to amplify my own communication, but also to assist others in amplifying their own communication channels. And this again is both like in and out. So we're clearing space to be able to receive messages from our allies and from other beings, and from spirit, most of all. I mean, all of these allies, and even the people in our lives are messengers of spirit, especially when our vessels are really clear and really tuned, to just the our own like vibrations, and not taking on vibrations of other people, but just really clear and in tune with our own heart's radiance.
Mm.
So this blue frequency has been coming in really strong, and ways to work with the frequency of blue obviously is to wear the color blue, working with blue crystals, consuming blue foods or blue herbs, and just surrounding yourself with blue. You can do guided or just meditations, visualizations in a blue field, in a blue cave, in a blue mountain, like whatever you want. Just play with this energy, this frequency of blue, and allow that color frequency to uplift and support your communication and your authenticity, sharing with the world, and also your receptivity, to receive the gifts that other people are sharing right now.
Mm.
What do you have anything to share about that, Eliana? Anything to communicate about that?
Of course, I always have something to say about everything.
That's why we're here.
Blue chakra is open and ready to talk.
Yeah.
I love that we're talking about the blue lights, and I wanted to just kind of like tune the listeners into the fact that the light is an ally. The light in itself is an ally. So that can be the light from the sun. Like the sun definitely came in as an ally that wanted to kind of be called forth and invited into the space as like the original light codes, right? Like the original source of the solar energy of our bodies, of our souls, of our spirit. And to connect with like that energy, like you can even imagine that there's a bigger sun that channels light into our sun that then pours down to us and through us. And you see, I guess, on like on social media and things, a lot of people are, call themselves a light worker. They talk about their light work. And I think there's a category of light work where, a lot of people just kind of throw that their path, their purpose, their starseed origin into this, like, I'm a light worker. And that's a beautiful space to be. And there's also this other path of the light worker, which is actually using the light codes as allyship. And, I did a light worker training a couple years ago, and we were working with the different elements of light and the ways to work with light to heal and clear and support the body, the energy field, all of these different layers of our being. And so light in its own is such an ally. And so Holly's, tuning us into this very particular color of light, this blue frequency that has been coming through very strong, the green and the blue. When we started our Reiki attunement circle this summer, the green lights were coming in so strongly. And it was, this request to kind of hold a space for this Reiki in this kind of forested temple that we were creating in our little circle, in our little grid group. And then it's kind of like we opened up the heart, we made space in the heart, and now we're moving up into the sixth chakra, right? Into Vishuddha, into this blue frequency of the throat that moves into our body, but moves out and around our body, and also like pervades all space and time, right? Like your words, especially now, you put them on the internet, like they're there for who knows how long, right? Until I guess the internet collapses, but like they really can be messengers to future generations. And you can use your words to connect back to your past self as well, and like communicate to that person. So yeah, this blue energy, this opening and this request from spirit to like expand our self-expression and our authenticity mystery and to open up those fields, I think is just so beautiful to be weaving into the space. But also to just invite anyone, that if they're like, oh, you can work with light in this way, you can work with color frequency in this way, it can be an ally that just like, yeah, you put on a blue cloak that day and like, that's it. You've done your energy work, right? You called in those blue allyships and then you just let it work its magic. So yeah, you can work with the light, and you can work with light in a lot of different ways, and really just channeling and holding kind of the presence of the vision of it or the sensation of it or the physicality of it will start to just kind of inform your aura, and then start to inform your life, and then life can start to inform you back as to how that blue frequency has actually been like helping and showing up in its own way.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you, Eliana, for putting that so beautifully. And yeah, that was I like what you said. Yeah, I just like all of that. I'm just like, what do I even say? It was just all so beautiful and magical. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I feel like we went quantum. Let's go back down to the earth
Yeah.
again. Bring us back into to the next topic of conversation.
Totally. I'm like, I want to say so many things about that, like rainbow light codes, and there's so many more allies that we could even talk about just based off of what you said, but I'm really trying to keep it all succinct and not go off on too many tangents here.
Yeah.
But yeah. Should we get into the next one? You
Yeah.
all ready? Okay, cool.
We're talking about the rainbows and we're gonna bridge to other dimensions, you know?
Yes.
Keep it in.
Exactly. Okay, so this is going to be like another grouping of allies coming through adaptogenic herbs. So these are like kind of a category of plant allies that have really been coming in lately. I think especially since we all just went through the pandemic together, we're just kind of all taxed, like that, like stress taxes your body. It does. And big stressors, like major stressors in life, can be like illness, a move, a change of job, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, what about like a global pandemic where, you know, that was just really obviously really stressful and caused a lot of other big life changes. I think those big stressful life changes for many people. So these adaptogenic herbs, I feel, have really been coming in right now to assist us in healing our nervous systems and supporting our nervous systems. So adaptogenic herbs are really wonderful herbs. They assist your body in adapting to stress, to whatever stress you are working through in your life. And they also support the function, whatever function your body needs in that moment. So, like if you take these herbs in the morning, they can help you wake up. They can help you get going as you start working. They can help your brain start, spinning faster. If you're working out, they can help your body start moving oxygen a little bit faster. If you take these herbs before you go to sleep, they can help your body wind down. They can lower your cortisol levels, and they're just really supportive and nourishing for your adrenal glands. And right now, these herbs have really been coming in. I think that many of us in the Western culture, like United States, a lot of us are just drinking caffeine all day long, all day long. And it's so normal. It's like the most normal thing. You wake up, you have your coffee, you get to work, you have another coffee. There's just coffee all around in our culture. And I love that ally. That is a plant ally and a beautiful ally. But I think that right now there's just this real call to come into these more supportive herbs. Coffee kind of, it's really beautiful and wonderful to get that big rush of adrenaline, and that what it's doing is it's like it's taxing your adrenal glands. It's kind of stealing energy from your future body. And so these adaptogenic herbs don't do that. They don't steal your energy. They help to nourish your body so that you naturally have more energy, and it's just very more supportive, much more supportive for the adrenal glands than to just like steal energy from them. So the adaptogenic herbs that are coming forward, there's a lot of them, but the ones that are coming forward are ashwagandha, reishi, and maca. And these are all like so beautiful and lovely, and they're longevity herbs also. Um, they help your body live and function longer, better. Who doesn't want that, right? Um, and with these, like with maca, it also increases your happiness. Like it's a joy promoter, maca. Like who doesn't want more joy? So it's like kind of like replacing coffee with some of these adaptogenic herbs in the morning, like joy promoting herbs. They just, it's just a great way to really support your body, and through a stressful time and through the stressfulness of life, and also to kind of help us recover from this really taxing global event that we're coming out of, I think. But also is just kind of, we don't know what's going to happen next, you know? So I think right now there's this call to really just rest. Like, how about you just let your body rest, you know, instead of going and reaching for a cup of coffee, maybe you can sneak in a 15-minute nap somewhere. You know, it's like when I was pregnant and trying to avoid caffeine, I remember I was doing massage therapy and I would go out to my car and I would just roll my seat down and roll my windows up and just pass out for like 15, 20 minutes for my breaks or my lunch break or whatever, and just take a little nap and then wake up and feel refreshed and get back to it. But you know, it's like that's not really, I know it's not doable for a lot of people, but maybe it is. Maybe you can do that a little bit. You know, it's like, how about we try sleeping when we're tired instead of just pushing through? You know, and I think that these adaptogenic herbs also really like energetically, when you commune with them, they they kind of have this message of like, hey, it's okay to rest. Like you can just take a moment and rest and not be productive and actually just enjoy your morning or enjoy, you know, communing with the taste and the flavors of these herbs or whatever it is you're sipping on. Um, yeah, so the ways you can work with these herbs internally, like as long as it's okay with your doctor, if you know if you're on any medications, obviously you probably want to talk to your doctor about this general caveat, you know. But yeah, you can also like hold these herbs if you can find them whole. You know, there's a lot of ways you can work with herbs that aren't taking them internally. If that's not resonating with you, you can hold them and you can commune with them in that way as well.
Mm.
Yeah. So Eliana, do you have anything to share about that or anything you want to add or
Yeah, I just like really appreciate this conversation, you know, because it's an invitation, right? It's not a it's an invited ally, right? To change something, change one ally out with another. And that's like really in behavioral health sciences, like you're not meant to just remove something that has been an ally and a partnership and something that has helped you get through your day for however long you've been doing it, right? Like the idea with behavioral health is that you replace it with a new habit and a new pattern. And so it's so like delicious and nourishing to even like sense into replacing a cup of coffee with like a cup of joy, right? And like instead of thinking of like it as like this is what I'm drinking just to survive, right? I've become totally dependent on this ally to survive this situation that is the human experience. Instead, it's like, oh, can I like maneuver just for this little bit over here and like drink a cup of joy and see how then that like affects the relationship with the coffee, right? And so that's like also with these allies and this work that we're doing, it's not a like give up everything you've ever known, right? It's like a invite in this new experience and let it like play into your day to day as well. Let it become a part of your practice, a part of your behavior change, you know, let it be this like you don't have to just cold turkey, you can add in allies. You don't have to give up one, you can add in and you can do it in a way that is like unique and attuned to you, right? Like I love the idea of bringing in the spirit and just meditating with it and not having to consume it, because I might be moving forward in the conversation, but you know, something that we've been talking a lot about is our relationships with psychedelics. And both Holly and I kind of grew up on psychedelics, right? Like I would say at least like through the 20s to till now, maybe even a little before that for both of us. Like we've been working with these medicines that show you a new aspect of life. And so I'm kind of already bringing this in now because there's been a request from these allies. Like they've been very clear. I even heard another teacher talk about this at the beginning of the pandemic, someone who offers mushroom ceremonies and has been working with the mushroom, that these medicines, these allies are asking us to be more conscious with them and to work with them in a way that isn't so consumption based and isn't so needing to take all of that energy and essence and use it just for myself, right? It's like that's a power play. It's a patriarchal power play. And so these allies are also like they're inviting in healthier relationships. So things like coffee and things like cannabis and things like smoking, just smoking in general for anybody that smokes, like, can you connect with these allies in a way that doesn't have to, one, harm the substance, harm the entity or the energy that you're working with, doesn't cause more capitalism onto that essence, and in a way where your body can be so subtly tuned in to the spirit of these things that you don't even need to take it inside of you. Like I'm taking a little break from cannabis right now. And I did exactly kind of what you called in, Holly, where I said, like, cannabis, you've been my ally for 20-ish years. And I love you. You've been a great friend. You've helped me in so many different levels of my being to grow into this person that I am now. I don't want to break up with you, but I want to be in healthier relationship with you. And so I invited it in. I invited cannabis to just be a spirit, a guide, to hold the space and to be in conversation with me without me having to take any of it into my body. And so I'm playing with that right now too. So I just kind of love how you brought that in of like, just bring it into your aura. You don't have to bring it into your body. You can simply just hold the space with it and get something out of that, get a really connected resonance from that exchange.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that whole idea just about, yeah, inviting it into your field. It kind of like reminds me of microdosing, it's just like you don't need to have like a ton of these allies of medicines or whatever it is that you're working with. It's okay to just have a little bit. And it's sometimes even more potent that way. That's kind of reminds me of homeopathic medicine a little bit. Just the tiniest bit can be so potent. And yeah, I'm glad that we started talking about cannabis because cannabis has been a huge ally in both of our lives. And I think it is, it's an emerging ally for humanity as the world starts to really accept this plant spirit and this plant ally. Um, in more medicinal ways and also like recreational ways for people to just be allowed to explore the allyship and the relationship with cannabis, I think is so beautiful. I know that cannabis has led me to a really good place in my life. And yeah, I feel that I think a lot of people in this healer community have, and people with kind of like a lifetime relationship with cannabis have really felt this kind of like, oh, like we need to just be mindful about how much we're consuming of this and like why and when and all that, because it can be really easy to start to abuse these allies. And I think that, just becoming really intentional with the way that you are communing with these allies is really important, and I think that like it's also, you know, mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms are becoming more uh available and legal. They are decriminalized where we are here in Portland, Oregon, and in Denver too, right? Denver, Colorado, and other places in the world. They're starting to see these things as medicines, these very like spiritual plant allies. It's like, they are spirit medicines, and I think that kind of this community, this healing community, people who have really been communing with these spirits for a long time are really getting that message of like, okay, I think I don't have to take like all of this anymore. Like, I think that, we can kind of like get the download and like go there and do the more macro doses, and then just kind of, you know, slow down, like let it sit, integrate. It's really important to integrate. And then just, yeah, I feel like right now I'm to a point where with mushrooms, if I feel them, like if I see somebody with them, if they are in my field and someone has them in their hand or something, or they're like in my home, like I can feel them. Like I get high, like I can feel, like I start to get kind of that that stomachy kind of thing where, you know, when you just take mushrooms and you're feeling it kind of go down into your, I start to feel that. I start to feel my body like processing that energy. And it's like, it's just, it's so cool. And it's not only like that with mushrooms though. It's like that with um everything that you're allowing into your field and every ally. And, you know, I think that's just such a beautiful way to kind of like, it's just so on theme for the whole conversation that we're having. You know, the rocks sitting outside your yard or outside your home, the room that you're sitting in, the, you know, the rocks underneath your feet, underneath, you know, your floors. It's all influencing us, you know, and we're constantly being influenced by things around us that are out of our control. And so it kind of makes sense to, you know, reach out to those things that may be influencing us and, you know, feel into them and maybe form allyships with them, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love that because I was getting a couple of visions. The first one was that, have you seen that meme where the person is like, I need another plant medicine journey. And then there's this big shadow crawling behind them that says, integrate me first. And
Oh, no,
it
that
feels like
sounds
we're,
awesome.
yeah, it's so good. But it feels like we're on like this kind of collective, like especially the last couple of years. Like I can say wholeheartedly that it feels like we've been on this like LSD trip that none of us have been able to get off of, and it's just like rapidly transforming our environment. So I think that like this microdose conversation, this like feeling the mushroom energy without even consuming it in your body, like I think that because we're already on this kind of consciousness trip that's happening, it's like we don't really need the macros anymore. And of course, there's time and place for that. Like I'm down for a macro dose. I understand the need for it. I understand that there's certain people that really need that to kind of break them out of the matrix so that they can actually see what's going on. As my ally starts to bark in the background, I don't know if you can hear him, but yeah. And like also the mushroom is like this small little expression. Had to pause quickly because my ally, my wolf dog, was barking in the background, you know, and every time I do a session, it's so funny. I tell people that have not worked with me before, like, I have this very loud ally, and he'll usually start cheering when we're saying something that's like really important that needs to be said. You'll hear him barking, and he always does. He always does at this moment. That's like, yeah, the guides are here. We love what you're saying. So the mushroom too, it's like the mushroom is like this little being that pops up from the underworld, right? Like that the underworld message came in is like, that's also an ally, you know, like we're not trying to disassociate from the darkness. Like there's allies also in those places that we've deemed as bad or wrong or gross or darkness, right? Like there's allies everywhere. And the mushroom is this beautiful expression of that because it's like has grown from this dark underground mycelium network that is all pervading throughout this entire planet. It like grows underneath of every single one of our consciousnesses in this land, in this earth that we're on. And it's this kind of huge ally, right? This like grandiose ally that's here for the earth. And then we take just like a little dose, you know, or even just like have it in the space. And you connect in with that huge mycelium network by just being with that one little entity. And so I also just wanted to call into that, like we are talking about all of these different aspects of the one source, right? Of the source of life, of the source of God, of the source of spirit, like however you want to call this one energy that we've like all blossomed from, that gave us our life, that brought us into existence, that co-creates this experience with us from above and below and within and without, and is just so intertwined to who we are, that it's like when you tap into this one ally, you are tapping into the mycelial network of the spiritual plane. And though it might seem really small or unimportant, or just seeing a mushroom while you're walking in the forest, it's like, no, you are seeing the earth's expression of this consciousness that is living and breathing the land alive in each and every moment of this planet's existence. So yeah, I'm not even sure like what brought me into that, but I just wanted to like honor, you know, like the connection of these allies to the greater source, the mushroom to the greater network, and how when we're connecting with these beings, you know, Holly and I are very attuned to the fact that they are just messengers from God. They are just messengers from this greater source and expression of life. And we honor that. We honor the infinite in these finite, little expressions of the being that we're talking about right now.
Right. Absolutely. And I love that you were saying what you were saying about like just these medicines kind of like breaking people out of the matrix, and how like we have this really strong like matrix program running in the like modern like pop culture, or like just modern culture. And I think you know, a lot of these allies can help us kind of break out of them and tune back into our own programming. And also allyship and working intentionally with specific allies can just it's like designing your own programming, you know? Like how can we cultivate our own programming that we align with spirits that we align with and are supportive of us, because we're always going to be influenced by the people around us and the media around us and whatever it is that we're tuning into. So if we start to tune into things a little bit more intentionally with the things that we're taking into our bodies, those things for sure, and also all of the things in our fields, in our homes, right around us, like we are we are so we're so much more intuitive than we think we are, and we're so much more influenced than we think we are. So like for example, like if you are, we were talking about coffee. So it's like, okay, if you're drinking coffee, if you're really stressed out at work, you're pushing through your break times, you're not really sleeping that much, you're getting a lot done, you're producing a lot. But what are you like, what are the decisions, where are the decisions that you're making coming from? Like they're coming from a taxed nervous system. Everything you say, everything you hear is filtered through this taxed nervous system. So okay, so how can we support your nervous system so that or your whole body, your whole being, your whole field, everything, so that you are completely balanced, you are completely in tune with your own heart's vibration, and you are supported in that, then what comes of that? What comes out of you when you're in that state? What are you creating? What are you producing when you're in that state? When you're in this totally aligned, totally supported, you're tapped into your own field and your own heart's resonance. That's what I want to see. Let's all tap in.
Yeah, I feel like we should like all take a breath with that, because that was really powerful.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I feel like sometimes we get on such a good one. We're just like going and going. We gotta remember to let things land a little bit.
Yeah.
Integrate.
Integrate.
Integration time. We're gonna start weaving that in.
Yeah.
Now take a
Yeah.
breath. Yeah.
We do that in our normal lives, but then when we're here, we're just like, let's channel all the guidance. And again, it's like so good to tune back in. Where is it coming from? Can it come from one deep breath? And can that be enough?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So it seems like we're coming to the end of our time here. Holly, was there anything else that you were feeling really called to say as we kind of close this circle out?
Yes. Okay. I wanted to also talk about just a little piece here, that these allies that we are working with, plant allies, archangels, like all of the deities. We should do another episode on more cosmic, because a lot of really grounded allies came through today, but let's do that. We'll do more cosmic allies on another episode. And I wanted to mention that all these allies have their own intentions and their own missions on this planet. And as we are, especially the ones that we are consuming into our bodies, we want to make sure we just want to kind of like have like an open dialogue with them and be able to check in and really feel into, okay, is this ally still serving my highest good? Is this ally still resonant with me and my mission? Because we are always changing, we are always flowing, and we may flow away from some of our allies, like we were just talking about cannabis, and like I love cannabis. I feel like I will always kind of intermittently maybe like commune with that plant spirit, but maybe, definitely not as much as I used to. I think that my relationship with it is changing. I am changing. And I think that that's just a great awareness to have, that you don't have to commune with these allies forever. You can weave them into your life as you feel you need them, and you can let them go, or you can come back. They're your friends. So friends come and friends can go sometimes. So just knowing that and being able to check in and tune in with self, and just kind of feel, is this ally still, are we still good? Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. It's like, again, that reciprocity in relationship and making sure that you're still in relationship with yourself as you're building and letting go of relationships with the things like in and around us. So I love that. Thank you for bringing that in. All right. Well, I think that's all we wanted to say about allyship today in this conversation. Although, the conversation will continue throughout these podcasts as we are consciously inviting in these messengers and giving voice to them in the different topics that, we're weaving into this thread. So yeah, we're just so excited about this conversation and about the allies. And thank you to all of the allies that showed up and held space for us today and sent your messages. We're so grateful for you. And thank you, listener, for being with us and having this excitement to listen and to hear us talk about the allyship and these beautiful supportive tools that we've been using for expansion and that really want to work with you on your expansion moving forward. So we look forward to seeing you next week. Remember to tune in for more magical musings here on We Heal. And for more insights and ways to connect with Holly and myself, you can find us on Instagram. Holly is at the P-Switch and Eliana at wellness_weaver. We love to connect with our audience, and we really love to find each other in other spaces besides just here on the podcast. Thanks for joining.